So welcome everybody, and thank you all for joining me this evening. Tonight, I'll be talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly about sugar. We'll be talking about how sugar affects us, why we crave it so much, and what you can do to help curb those sugar cravings to avoid derailing an otherwise healthy diet. By the end of the program, you'll have a good grasp on why sugar has earned its place as the root cause of many of our pain symptoms and even chronic diseases, and why we should be limiting the amount of added sugar that we eat and not necessarily all sugars. I'll be following the discussion with any questions. Feel free, as I said, I mentioned ahead of time, to type them into the Q&A box, and I will try to answer them as they come up, because I really would like to really address any questions that you have about this issue. I'm also excited to give you the details of my upcoming cooking program. It's designed to limit the amount of sugar in your diet. How appropriate, right? So many of you are already familiar with my cooking programs, and you know how much fun they are and just how good you feel when you're going through it. So by the end of the program, I'm hoping that everyone on the call today will want to join the group. And the program includes an introductory Zoom call, all the materials you need to shop for and prepare for your meals for 2 people for an entire week. I'll be guiding everyone in cooking through a Zoom program on Sunday, January 23rd, at the end of which you will have your food for an entire week. So just before we get started, I just wanted to give a quick introduction. Many of you are already familiar with me and what I do, but a few of you may not be so familiar. So my name is Evey Schweig. I am a holistic health coach and anti-inflammation expert with a degree in biology, and I'm certified in integrative nutrition. So my journey began probably about 10 years ago, maybe even longer now, with when I was suffering from joint pain, foggy thinking, intense sugar cravings. And through my own research, I switched to a nutritious anti-inflammatory diet and started making small, healthy lifestyle changes, which ended up clearing up my symptoms. I loved how good I felt. I was so excited about this that I went back to school and learned how to help others feel the same way. So today I work with clients using clinical food testing to identify triggers and design curated meal programs to help reduce the symptoms of chronic inflammation. Some of them, which I mentioned before: digestive distress, joint pain, foggy thinking, low energy levels. My clients have the tools that they need to make confident food and lifestyle choices for a lifetime. They basically age younger. So, shall we begin? Wonderful. So today, I'd like to give you some background information on one of the foods that is quite possibly the worst offender when it comes to your health, and that is processed sugars. So growing up, we heard that too much sugar can give you cavities, right? But we rarely heard about it as it related to other health issues. But now we know that sugar is one of the leading causes of inflammation. Inflammation is what causes many of the aches and pains we complain about as we grow up. Joint pain for one, but also digestive issues. I mentioned bloating, rashes, even mood swings. And it's also responsible for weight gain. And we know now that chronic inflammation can affect every organ of our bodies, leading to conditions such as heart disease, diabetes, and obesity. So by reducing or eliminating added sugars, you will feel and see immediate results. So first of all, let's acknowledge that sugar has its pros as well as cons. It's not evil. After all, it is a major source of energy for the body. So basically, our body gets energy from the glucose molecule found in sugar. Sugar is made up of glucose and fructose. It's the glucose that is giving us energy. Our cells need a constant supply of glucose at all times to do their job properly. In particular, it is the main source of fuel for your brain. It helps the nerve cells process information. So without glucose, our brains would not function properly. So after we eat sugar, it's broken down into glucose, which is then carried by our blood to our cells for food. And that's why we talk about blood sugar levels. So you've probably heard about that, blood sugar levels when you go to the doctor, and we're constantly monitoring this. But I also wanted to mention that carbohydrates are another source of energy for our cells. We can get energy from fats and proteins as well, but they're much more difficult for the body to process and to assimilate than the quick energy that they can get from carbohydrates. Therefore, carbohydrates and sugars are the preferred energy of the body, and why our bodies crave it so much. So a carbohydrate basically is nothing more than sugar molecules that are strung together in a chain. A simple carb is easily broken down by our body into quick energy. Sugars are considered a simple carb. So there are other types of carbs as well. These are called complex carbs. Complex carbs are treated differently by the body. They're broken down more slowly due to their complicated structure, and the sugars that they break down into are then released more slowly and more steadily into the bloodstream. So where are these complex carbs found? They're found in foods like fruits, vegetables, nuts, beans, whole grains, all natural whole foods. Now, these complex carbs can be refined, and you've probably heard of the expression refined carbohydrates. A refined carbohydrate would be a white flour, white rice, and when a complex carb or a wheat grain, say for instance, is refined, what happens is the bran and the nutrients are stripped from it. And the body then treats this more like sugar. So ideally, we want to be getting our energy source from complex carbs that have not been refined. So let's look again at those simple carbs. What foods have simple carbs, and what should we be avoiding? So simple carbs are those that are found a lot in the standard American diet. So what are they? Foods with a lot of added sugars, such as candies, desserts, cookies, cakes, things with refined white flour in them, and processed foods such as potato chips, granola bars. So anything that has these refined flours in it, white flour, so you'll have white bread, pastries, some cereals are also high in refined carbs, white rice. Notice I'm saying white, white, white. That is an indication of a lot of these refined foods. But, so you can find it in crackers. Pasta is another refined carbohydrate. And because sugar is a ready source of energy, our bodies seek it out and crave it, which is why our standard American diet includes a lot of sweet foods, but really more than is healthy for us. So as I've said, sugar is actually something our body needs for energy. The problem is sometimes too much of a good thing isn't good for us. And the amount of sugar we've been consuming has been increasing over the years. So taking a look at this chart, in the early 1800s, two important changes occurred. The process for extracting sugarcane from beets, or sugar from beets, I should say, was invented. And a more efficient method of refining sugarcane was perfected. In the 1950s, high fructose corn syrup was developed by modifying corn syrup to form a highly concentrated form of sugar. You can see in this chart the jump that happened right around that time. By the 70s, consumption is way up. So 200 years ago, the average American ate only about 2 pounds of sugar a year. By the 1970s, we were eating 123 pounds of sugar per year. So from 2 pounds per year to 123. Today, the average American consumes almost 152 pounds of sugar in 1 year. So this is equal to 3 pounds or 6 cups of sugar consumed each week. So let's take a closer look at how much sugar we're actually eating. So due to more awareness on our part, the good news is the average consumption of sugar has actually gone down. That's a good thing. So the latest research shows that the average American now consumes about 17 teaspoons per day. So that's down from the 42 teaspoons per day from the early 2000s. So we're down to 17 now from 42. So again, this is probably due to rising public awareness about the dangers of consuming sugary foods. The major culprits being sugary drinks and treats. So amazingly, the amount consumed by children has gone down as well. Again, probably because parents are more aware, and since they have a control over the food that their children eat, have been limiting the amount of sugary snacks and treats that have been marketed to the kids on TV and public media. But this isn't enough. So 17 teaspoons is still 272 empty calories being consumed per day. And I say empty calories because these calories are only energy. There's no other nutritional value that comes with it. The American Heart Association recommends that men should consume no more than 9 teaspoons or about 150 calories of added sugar per day. For women, the number is lower, 6 teaspoons or about 100 calories per day. So 17 teaspoons is almost 3 times what is recommended for women per day. So what is the danger in consuming too much sugar? Good question. So many of us do not have a lifestyle that requires the amount of sugar that we're consuming. And much of the energy from sugar or simple carbs we consume will probably go unused and be stored as fat. This results in weight gain, but less obvious effects such as low mood or mood fluctuations, foggy thinking, acne, energy drain, and accelerated aging. So many of these symptoms are the result of a lesser known effect too much sugar can have on the body, and that is inflammation. So let's take a quick look at inflammation to find out what that is. So there's 2 types of inflammation. Acute is a short-term inflammation that is part of the body's natural healing process. So during an injury or infection, the body releases chemicals to help protect it and help to fight off any harmful organisms. So this can cause redness, warmth, swelling, something typically that we associate with a sprained ankle, say. However, some foods like sugar can also cause inflammation in the body. Okay, this is also normal. This inflammation is caused by the formation of free radicals, which are the normal natural byproduct of the day-to-day metabolism of our cells. So our cells doing their job will actually put off these free radicals and cause these unprotected or unguarded, these free radicals will lead to inflammation. Luckily, the body has a way of neutralizing these free radicals and with this normal amount of inflammation. It does this through the antioxidants that it makes. So the body can make its own antioxidants to protect itself. However, eating too many inflammatory foods overwhelms the body's natural ability to fight the damage being done. And it can produce enough antioxidants to neutralize, it cannot produce enough of the antioxidants to neutralize this damage. So this then results in a chronic low-grade inflammation. And this can cause the symptoms I mentioned earlier and more serious health problems such as heart disease, diabetes, cancer, allergies, things that the diseases that are affecting our modern society. So human studies confirm this link between added sugar and higher inflammatory markers. Inflammatory markers are nothing more than signs of body-wide inflammation that are measured in lab tests using blood samples. So you probably are used to this when you go for your annual physical, having things tested in your blood. One of them are these inflammatory markers. So one study of 29 healthy people consuming 1 can of soda per day showed that there was an increase in the inflammatory marker, the C-reactive protein, insulin resistance, and higher levels of LDL, what we also call bad cholesterol. So these people also tended to gain a bit more weight too. And remember earlier I was talking about refined carbohydrates? So in addition to added sugar, eating too many refined carbohydrates have shown that have been linked to increased inflammation in humans. So in another study that was done, the participants were eating just 50 grams of refined carbs in the form of white bread per day. 50 grams is about 2 slices of white bread. This alone resulted in higher blood sugar levels and an increase in another inflammatory marker, the NF-κB. So consuming too much added sugar and refined carbohydrates is linked with elevated inflammation in the body, as well as insulin resistance and weight gain. But let's take a closer look at what happens in the body after sugar is consumed and enters the bloodstream. So it's important to understand how manipulative sugar can be. So after you eat and glucose enters your bloodstream, your body creates something called insulin. Insulin is a scout. Its job is to shuttle glucose to wherever it's needed, reducing the amount of glucose in the blood. So the glucose in the sugar, it enters the bloodstream very quickly. So there's lots of it after it's being consumed. The insulin sees this incredible rise in the amount of glucose and know it needs to do something with it. So if you need energy, say you're running a marathon or you're taking a test where your brain needs blood, your body, the insulin will direct the energy to where it's needed. However, if you're sitting on the sofa and watching TV, chances are pretty good that now the insulin is going to be shuttled back and stored as fat. So the result of this is that now all the glucose that was in the blood is now being stored or used, and there's nothing in the bloodstream. And this is when you experience low blood sugar levels. Your body realizes that your sugars are low. It says it needs energy. And of course, your body knows how to get energy, and that's to eat sugar. And that's when you crave more sugar. You can see it's a vicious cycle. So how can we combat this vicious cycle then, right? Well, we need to be eating foods that are low in sugar throughout the day, so we don't have that excess sugar spike and subsequent low sugar levels. But there's more to this than just having a consistent energy level. So long-term, this roller coaster effect of sugar highs and lows can take its toll on our body. Specifically, it triggers something called insulin resistance and inflammation. So you may have heard the term insulin resistance before. It's something that has been pretty common in recent news Diabetes is the end result of insulin resistance. And as I said earlier, it's the job of the insulin to shuttle sugar to where it's needed or store it as fat, right? So if we continually feed on a diet high in sugar and processed foods, over time, our insulin will start to become resistant. Basically, it gives up. It no longer is able to function to help regulate the blood levels in the blood sugar levels. Basically, it's tired. So this instant insulin resistance then leads to inflammation. It's a vicious cycle that can result with more inflammation causing more insulin resistance and vice versa. So this can eventually lead to something called metabolic syndrome, which is a precursor to type 2 diabetes and heart disease. So metabolic syndrome, it isn't really a true disease, but really a cluster of risk factors. And you can see those risk factors listed on the slide here in green. And they're usually the things that you're tested for when you go to your doctor at in your annual physical and what they're looking for. But these risk factors identify individuals that are at high risk for developing chronic conditions, such as the type 2 diabetes that I mentioned, heart disease, or stroke later on in life. So metabolic syndrome is kind of like an advanced warning system. So unless you make significant changes in your lifestyle, you're at great risk of developing these diseases. The good news, though, you can improve these risk factors by changing your diet and lifestyle. And before we go any further, I just wanted to talk a minute about these other lifestyle factors that can affect metabolic syndrome and inflammation in general. It's not just the foods that we eat that affect our health, but what's going on around us as well. So simple changes in our lifestyle habits can help reduce and reverse these adverse effects. So simple things like, yes, improving our diet. Absolutely, that's a biggie. But maybe getting more exercise, just fitting in a few more steps per day, joining a health club or planning a walk with friends. I know the weather is getting a little bit colder now. It's getting a little harder to do, especially with the pandemic situation that we're in right now. But, finding ways to get in extra movement, even little things can add up and help. Controlling your stress level and weight. So stress can contribute to weight gain and heart disease. So learning how to relax and manage stress to help you feel better is important. I talk to my clients a lot about doing this. Maybe it's, meditating or finding a yoga class, even if the yoga class is online now, right? But even something as simple as just stepping back and taking a few deep breaths. It's really interesting, but by controlling your breath and slowing it down, you are actually tricking your brain into thinking that you're in a relaxed mode. And that will naturally reduce cortisol levels that help reduce the chance of inflammation. So stress and weight, regular physicals, see your doctor. You and your doctor should be monitoring your weight, blood pressure, your cholesterol levels, blood glucose levels. All of these things are indicators of that metabolic syndrome. And maybe set up a bedtime routine so that you get enough sleep. Sleep is so important, more important than just resting. It's a time for our body to heal and repair. So now that we know the damage that overeating sugar can cause, let's look at why we're eating more sugar. Why does it seem that we've been increasing the amount in our diet? While our body craves sugar because we need it to survive, there are other factors that influence our food decisions, many of which we're not even aware of. It's almost a subconscious thing. In our highly industrialized society, sugar is available to us all year round. But this is not the natural way that humans have evolved to eat. We naturally ate by seasons. We typically only ate sweet foods found in nature during the growing seasons. But now, sweet foods can be easily shipped from around the world and baked into processed foods, which are available everywhere. So with an abundant source of calories all the time, we don't need to store our calories for times of famine, right? Just like our ancestors had to. But our brain hasn't evolved as fast as the food industry has. It's still telling us to eat as much as possible to store up energy. In addition, we don't have to expend as much energy to get that food. So we don't have to hunt and forage, right? All we have to do typically is walk as far as our refrigerator. So we're not burning off all the calories that we are eating. So in addition, let's take a look at the way our food comes to us. Fruit juices are a good example. Fruit juices are really just a form of concentrated sugars. So you would naturally get full and stop eating after what, like 1 or 2 apples? 2 apples if they're small. Fresh whole fruit naturally fills us up. But not many people would think twice about drinking an entire juice box. A juice box has about 6 apples, the juice of 6 apples in it. So that's more calories and sugar than the fruit that it was made up from. And it no longer has the fiber that would help fill us up and stabilize that blood sugar and keep us full for hours. So by removing the fiber, we're actually allowing that sugar to be assimilated into our body more rapidly. Nature has this wonderful way of regulating our blood sugar levels. And as I mentioned before, sugar is everywhere. Remember, I mentioned crackers, barbecue sauce, sodas, sugary drinks. What I'm so surprised about when I started this was ketchup. Ketchup has a lot of sugar. Salad dressings have a lot of sugar added to it. It's estimated about 70% of the foods most Americans eat is processed. And of that processed food, 80% contains added sugars or high fructose corn syrup. And as I said before, high fructose corn syrup is a concentrated processed form of sugar. It's added to prevent spoilage, and it greatly reduces the nutritional content of that food while increasing the calories. So, Bliss Point, have you heard of that term before? So food manufacturers know about our weakness for sugar, and they're taking full advantage of it by adding as much sugar as possible to excite our taste buds and to reward that reward center of the brain. In fact, there's a crucial tipping point companies look for when adding sugar to food, and that's called the Bliss Point. So this is the precise amount of sugar that it will take for a consumer to get a sugar high without becoming sickeningly sweet. It's all perfectly manufactured to sell the product, not to make it healthier for us, but to sell it and to preserve it. So companies are constantly marketing food high in sugar, fat, and salt too, making us want the foods they're selling. All right, think of that Bliss Point that I just mentioned. And by eating these foods frequently, we actually start to crave them. Sugar has an addictive quality. As I said, it excites the pleasure center of the brain, that reward center. And when the reward system fires, it reinforces behaviors, making it more and more likely for us to carry out these actions again and again and again. We actually feel like we need sugar to be happy. So with all of this marketing for us to eat more, it's not surprising that we consume as much sugar as we do. But let's not dwell on the negative, okay? Let's take a look at some of the simple things that we can do right now to find out where added sugars might be hiding in our diet and how to reduce our sugar consumption. All right? So One way to do this is to naturally add in more natural sugar and avoid added sugars. So it's important to note that there is a difference between added sugar and natural sugar. Added sugar is removed from its original source and added to foods and drinks to serve as a sweetener or, as I said, to increase shelf life. So bacteria cannot survive in a highly sugary environment. Added sugar is found mostly in processed foods and drinks, though table sugar is also considered added sugar. So be careful adding sugar into your morning coffee or tea, for instance. And while many studies connect added sugar to inflammation, natural sugar hasn't been linked to inflammation at all. In fact, many foods containing natural sugars, and I mentioned those before, those are your fruits, your vegetables, nuts, seeds, they're all anti-inflammatory due to something called phytonutrients that they contain. So phytonutrients are chemicals that the plant will produce to protect itself from disease and pests. And when we consume these phytonutrients, it does the same for us. They act like those antioxidants that I mentioned earlier that neutralize that free radical chain reaction that's happening in the body. They act very differently in the body than added sugar. So natural sugar is usually consumed, as I said, in a whole food. And it's eaten in conjunction to the protein and fiber that's found in that whole food, which causes them to be absorbed more slowly. And that steady, slow absorption of sugar, natural sugar, prevents blood sugar spikes. So natural sugars include those, as I said, in foods. And you can see different sugars are included in different things. So fructose, for example, is found in fruits. Lactose is found in milk and dairy products. One of the first ways to avoid added sugars is to know what they are and how to identify them. So just take a look at this chart. So if you're looking at some foods and wondering, does it have sugar in it? There's a lot of different words that can be used for sugar. So depending on its source, depending on how it's made, it has a different name. And this can make it very difficult to identify added sugar, even when you read an ingredient list, right? So check for ingredients. An easy way to know is to check for ingredients that end in OSE, OS, like sucrose, lactose, maltose. These are all types of sugar. By the way, let me know, you could put in the question and answer box. If you'd like to receive this chart, I can send it out afterwards, and you'll have it handy when you're checking foods that you have in your house. You can send it in question and answer, or you can email me as well. And you can start now by looking at the nutrient labels on the back of your foods. You'll be surprised at how many things contain sugar. So we now have, luckily, a new nutrition fact label, which will actually list the amount of added sugars in the product. And you can see it right here. I've indicated it with the red arrow. So this product contains 10 grams or about 2.5 teaspoons of added sugar. By the way, that's almost half the amount of sugar that a woman is supposed to eat each day, according to US government guidelines. If a product doesn't have the new label, it won't indicate added sugars. It will just say total sugars. When this happens, you need to identify the added sugar by looking at its ingredient list. And that leads us to our next slide. So ingredients are listed in descending order by quantity. So if you see sugar listed among the first few ingredients, the product is likely to be very high in added sugars. But beware, manufacturers can and do lists different sugars separately. So notice the number of different sugars mentioned in this processed food. I've circled them here so that you could see it pretty easily. This is a trick that manufacturers use to hide just how much sugar has been added to the food. So sometimes, even if sugar isn't listed in the top 4 ingredients, it may appear several different times under different names as shown here. And remember, you saw that list of names for sugar before, so you know how many there really are. One of the biggest contributors to added sugar, it's soda. Soda, but also fruit juices and sports and energy drinks. So sugary drinks. It's a good idea to eliminate as many of them as possible. So what should we be drinking then, you might ask? We want to drink plenty of water, but also green tea is good, herbal tea, drinks that are low in calories. Hydration is the first rule of proper nutrition and good health. Now, as you can see, the brain, 75% water, the body, 60% water. So we need to keep those levels up. A cell will only function properly with complete hydration. And now we've been talking about what we eat, but how we eat is just as important. So when we're calm and focused on eating, we're more likely to make healthy choices. One example of doing this, one way to do this is by chewing your food thoroughly. So chewing starts the digestive process by starting the release of enzymes in our saliva that starts to break down foods, specifically carbohydrates. So slow down and try to consume a meal in no less than 20 minutes. That, it's unbelievable how quickly we can go through a meal. But 20 minutes is the time that gives the brain enough time to register that it's eating and that it's full. And not only that, but eating mindfully is important as well. So if you're eating while you're watching TV, chances are you're not focusing on the food that you're eating, and your body is not in the right state of mind to absorb the food. So mindful eating is just as important as chewing. And another way to reduce sugar cravings is to eat foods that you like. So when you reduce the amount of sugar in your diet, your taste buds actually change. You start tasting your food more. Your taste buds aren't overly stimulated with sugar, and you start to taste the natural sweetness and flavor of foods. And I know, as hard as it is to believe, that this is really true. I know myself, and it was funny when my husband started changing the way he eats. One day he said to me, "Wow, you weren't kidding. Food really does taste better." He said, "I thought you were just saying that to get me to eat healthier." But it is true. He said so, right? So this will allow you to explore new foods, add in new variety. The idea here is to add in healthy foods that you enjoy so that you're not hungry and tempted to reach for a quick fix with a processed food. So if you're looking for suggestions, no problem. I've got a cooking program coming up called Rethink What You Eat and Age Younger. It's just the thing. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on, but it will supply you with healthy meals and snacks to go to when a craving hits. And one way to keep your taste buds happy and lower sugar cravings is to add in more flavor. So spices and vegetables are particularly good for this. There are vegetables that are naturally sweet, like sweet potatoes and carrots. And spices, they can enhance a sweet flavor as well. One of my favorites is roasting parsnips with cinnamon. Oh, it's delicious. If anybody wants the recipe, please just put it in the question or answer box or in the chat box, and I can send it out to you. And not only do spices as well as veggies help you avoid inflammatory sugars, they also contain those phytonutrients that I was mentioning before that help fight inflammation. And did you know that protein can help prevent sugar cravings. Because protein does not stimulate the release of insulin, as do carbohydrates, it actually helps to stabilize blood sugar levels, and lean protein can keep inflammation down. And let's not forget the importance of snacks. They help keep sugar levels steady throughout the day, preventing us from becoming overly hungry and making poor food choices. So I love having healthy options available for snacks. My favorite is to make a trail mix with some raw nuts and some dried fruit, maybe some unsweetened coconut flakes. Boy, it sure beats the sugars that are found in a protein bar, say. And very satisfying and very filling. So having fresh produce in the refrigerator also helps when putting together a quick meal. I like to have long-lasting produce that lasts for a long time, such as carrots, beets, sweet potatoes, root vegetables in particular will last a long time. Celery will also last a long time in the refrigerator. And planning meals out over the weekend and shopping for ingredients helps as well. So when your week gets busy, you'll have everything right there on hand. So many of you who have participated in my programs before, my food prep programs, know how helpful this is and how good it feels. So both saving you time during the week and because your sugar levels are staying consistent throughout the week. So hopefully by this point, you understand just how important it is to limit the amount of added sugars and refined carbohydrates in your diet. But you may not quite know how to go about doing that, right? Well, luckily, that's my superpower. So I can help you get back on track just in time for this new year. So my new cooking program that I mentioned before is designed to add in natural sweetness and eliminate inflammatory foods. You'll be eating delicious, easy to make meals that are low in added sugar and big on flavor. The program starts on Sunday afternoon, January 23rd, and includes everything you'll need to eat healthy for a week. So what do you get with the program? Well, you will receive an e-cookbook with recipes for breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks for the entire week for 2 people. Don't worry if you're an individual, you can have your recipes, or I like to suggest, if it's safe, that you invite a friend to come cook with you. It makes it so much more fun, and then you can just split the food afterwards. There's a written introduction to the program that comes along with the ebook, along with some additional shopping and cooking tips. And each recipe, there's an example of one here. This is one of the recipes in the program. Each recipe includes a beautiful photo of the meal, plus tips and notes for making substitutions or additions. And the recipes include whole food ingredients, no processed foods at all. There'll be a suggested meal plan for the week, so you can follow this meal plan the way it's set, or there's a blank meal planner if you would like to rearrange dishes at the beginning of the week to your liking, or some people just kind of go on a whim and kind of as the week goes through decides what they're in the mood to eat. And I'll just let you know that the menus here that are faded out, those are leftovers. So you're not cooking every single day. And most of the cooking is done, most of the prep work, there will be prep work and cooking done on the Sunday before. So you'll also receive a comprehensive shopping list with all the ingredients for quick, painless shopping. Everything is arranged by location in the grocery store to make it quick and easy and efficient. The amounts are given as well. And then there's a follow along prep guide for the day of, for that Sunday, to use while cooking and prepping during the cooking class. And we'll be prepping and making foods for the entire week, as I said. In addition, we'll be doing some Zoom calls And there is a welcome group Zoom call on January 19th. We'll go over the details and instructions for the program. And that is your opportunity to ask any questions that you might still have about it. There'll be a live cooking program, as I said, on that Sunday, where we'll all be cooking together. And as a result, you'll have a week's worth of prepped and ready-made meals. And then we'll also have a midweek check-in just to touch base, see how things are going, see if you have any questions. It's a great time to share what you've learned or little tips that you've done. This in the past is a great time for everybody to kind of share if they've made any substitutions or added in any additional spices. And of course, there's support from me via the Zoom calls, as I said, but also email. So that's the program. I'm hoping that you're all excited to join. It is a lot of fun, as I said. It's fun to share. It's fun to be in a group. You can join any of these ways. The cost is $69 for the entire program. You can sign up using this link. I'm not sure that it's interactive during the webinar here. You can try to click on it and see and let me know. But you can also scan this QR code. I will leave the screen up for a few minutes if you'd like to do that, or just email me and ask, and I will send you the link and information that you will need. So that's it. That is our program for this evening. I am going to stop my share now and say hi to everybody. Does anybody have any questions? Let me just see. Oh, okay, great. I will, you know what I'll do? I will send up a follow-up with the recording from this webinar with the parsnip recipe and the sugar, because I see a few of you had requested the list of sugar, different names for sugar. So I will send that along to you all in a little email to do. Excellent. Will I have this program in the future? You know, I will probably be doing different programs in the future. However, the nice thing about this is you can, if you join, everything is recorded. So you can do this on your own as a self-contained program. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to do that. That would be great. Yeah. So I also have another question here, something that came up during the program. Sorry, I missed this. Would switching to whole grain bread make a difference? It's a really good question because we have been kind of sold on this idea that whole wheat bread is good for us. It depends on what whole wheat bread you're eating, though. So, for instance, if you're eating a whole wheat bread that's mushy, that you can kind of smush up the bread slices into a ball, chances are pretty good that it is being made with processed refined carbohydrates. And they're adding back in coloring agents and some of the other bran aspects of the bread. But the reality is it's not as good for you as a hard, crusty bread, you know, the kind that we grew up with, hard to chew sometimes. But that's the bread that's best for us and that our body will respond best to. So knowing that, I'm hoping that people will start to adapt and change the eating habits and reach for, you know, healthier options in their diet. Okay, so I have a question here. Does plain Greek yogurt contain sugar? And the answer is yes, it does. But if it is truly plain yogurt, it will contain natural sugars, and that's the lactose that I mentioned. Just be careful. You want to look and see that there haven't been any added sugars. So, you know, sometimes it's deceptive. If, for instance, you're getting a vanilla yogurt, you think, oh, you know, that's plain, but they'll add sugars to it. So always be a detective. Check it out and see in that ingredient list or on the nutrient label if you're seeing added sugars. Okay. Any yogurt that has fruit in it, it has added sugars added to it. And that fruit is more like a jelly that's being added. So, all right, let's see. Just wanted to check to see if there's any more questions. No, that's good. Oh, one more question here about the program. If you're vegetarian, there are vegetarian options for each recipe. So if you're not in the mood, or you don't eat shrimp, for instance, because there is a shrimp dish, there are vegetarian options for that, and suggestions on meats that you can add in instead of the shrimp. Okay, so I so enjoyed sharing what I know with you tonight. I hope that it encourages you to start being a sugar detective and checking out where sugar can be hidden in your diet. I look forward, hopefully, to seeing you at our cooking program. It should be a lot of fun. It starts January 19th with our welcome Zoom call, and then the 23rd is when we'll be cooking. If you have any other questions, by all means, just email me and I will answer you back. All right, take care. Have a good evening. Hope to see you in the future. Bye-bye for now.